Bongino is the Republican 2012 candidate for U.S. Senate, a former New York cop and Secret Service agent. But does Bongino have what it takes to move into the political arena? Welcome to Headline News. And where did your interest in politics start?
I wasn't really an interest, it was more of a disappointment with the current process. My interest, my personal passion has always been economics, which has a bleed over into politics, of course, but I was never really interested in running myself. And I just had this profound sense, my wife and I, that we weren't really doing enough. We were doing a lot of complaining about the process. And this was my way of doing and not talking. So I left my job as a Secret Service agent and decided to jump in the race, and never expected it to turn into what it did. So we're very happy with where we are.
Now, of course, there are many blogs and many websites and lots of places where you allegedly are quoted. So do correct me if I'm sure you will, if they're not accurate. But you've mentioned you've experienced firsthand the failure in social policy and their experimentation throughout the U.S. What in particular, social policy-wise, do you believe we're failing?
Sure, that is accurate. I actually did an op-ed piece in the Sun about that. Spending time in one of the worst crime areas of New York City as a police officer, and being very young at the time, I think I was in my early 20s or maybe even late teens, I remember watching and hearing from people on the ground and just seeing the devastation of years and years of social policy that was guided by intentions and not results. You know, we're the United States, we're the wealthiest country on earth. We should have a good, solid safety net for people who genuinely need help, and there are folks out there who are struggling. The point is, there are a lot of folks out there who are struggling but don't have to. And when you incentivize them to continue that struggle without seeking a way out, that's exactly what you're going to get. You know, when you look at the destruction of inner city families and inner city neighborhoods, that's not natural. You know, there's nothing natural about, you know, high crime in, say, Baltimore City or New York City or Philadelphia. It's nothing. I mean, really, if it was natural, why isn't it happening in certain areas of Anne Arundel County where I live? A lot of that is government-driven policy that has done that and led to this decay, and it's unacceptable. I mean, it needs to be called out for what it is, destructive social policy.
And it's a government you want to become involved in.
You're right. I mean, but when you don't, run for office, if you really think there's a problem, you're destined to be ruled by people of lesser character than you. It's a famous saying. I didn't make that up, and I think me running as an outsider, legitimate outsider. It's not a soundbite. A lot of people say outsider, but they're not. I have a chance to really shake up the system. I call it the nest because that's what it is. It's just this nest of lobbyists and bought politicians, and it's really a shame that it's come to this.
It's interesting that that you say, talking about the big cities, and you say, why isn't it happening in your county? But you have been quoted as saying, you know, Maryland has issues that are being ignored. How do you think that, so you believe that, you know, the likes of Card and McCoskey have ignored these issues? How would you change that? What would you do? Sure.
I mean, not only ignored them, but actively voted against them. I mean, you have schools in Baltimore City right now that are really struggling. You have schools in D.C., right outside of Maryland, that are really legitimately struggling. I mean, the kids in those schools will have zero access to the American dream, both you and I or our children do, if you live in a middle-class neighborhood with decent public schools. Well, he voted against it twice. It's not a personal jab. It's just you're a politician. You were elected to serve the people, and you haven't. So it's not only, I would almost rather ignore and abstain from voting. It's not what he did. He actively voted against interests in certain cases, and that's devastating. You know, those parents in Washington, D.C. are no different than us because they're not those parents. They're just us. And I find that to be incredibly disingenuous for him to do.
I don't know if it's your potential cure, but you're certainly you've been quoted as saying, once again, you'd like to take all the billions of dollars from the U.S. education system and give it to parents. Honestly, that scares me. But obviously you have bigger and better plans, and allowing parents to choose the schools and perhaps developing more charter schools. Charter schools, you know, haven't excelled everywhere across the U.S. Right. Do you think it's wise to take money from, you know, a government that knows how to pool its resources and give it to parents who, honestly, I know I wouldn't have a clue what to do with it. And I'm sure the average person wouldn't either. Why do you think
Well,
that's a good idea?
I'll make 2 points. First, there's no data to show that charter schools don't outperform public schools. There's only data to show that some do in a limited respect. And the Stanford study that's quoted quite frequently, over 60% performed as well or better with half the money. So, I mean, if that was a business decision, it's a ground ball. Secondly, I would say, and I say this everywhere to folks on air, off air, and at state fairs, everywhere else, families who are in struggling school districts don't really care what you or anyone else think about school choice. They don't. They don't care what I think either. They want to choose where their kids go to school because their kids go to a poor school. So what I always find ironic is whenever I get into a school choice debate with someone, it's never someone actually in a struggling school district. It's always a parent from a community I live in or someone else telling me, oh, no, that's not going to work. Well, it's not working now. So what's your solution? You know, more money? Okay, well, where's that worked? I mean, I can show you hard data that shows not only has it not worked, it's been a complete waste. If money worked, they'd say, give them more. It's not the answer. The answer is choice. It works everywhere. It's been tried. You have to give it a chance. And again, those parents aren't really interested in anybody's opinion. They just want their kids to have a shot.
I think the reality is that if we gave them that money and they had that choice, it's much more of a bigger scale problem than a bad school district. You know, it starts with unemployment and it starts with, you know, really the social policy that you've seen fail. I mean, there's so much more to it than just bad schools and bad districts.
I would disagree. I would say that a lot of those social policies we talk about that are terrible would be alleviated by good schools. I mean, how many engineers do you know that are sitting on a street corner selling crack? I don't. I was a police officer. I was there. You know, how many gun arrests did I make from a nuclear scientist? Zero. None. So I dispute
You're just
that.
One person, though, in a very
Right,
nation
but
of millions.
I would say if you even did the research and looked at it, I don't think there's a lot of PhDs or master's degree holding folks who are in jail. I would debate the portion of that is extremely low. Matter of fact, I think most have a GED or less. Education is a bigger issue. It's a civil rights issue. I mean, it really is, and that's an overused term. But in this case, you know, we have 20,000 public high schools. Just 2,000 of them are responsible for half the dropouts. If your skin is black, you have a 50% chance of sending your kid to one of those schools.
I'm going to have to stop you there, but join us for more, a very interesting debate in the second half of Headline News.